After the first couple of seasons that Brett Bielema took control of this Fighting Illini program, he started to have something building, and this Illini team was looking to start to play some spoiler in the Big Ten Conference. However, last season, it didn't pan out that way. They took a step back, they missed the postseason, and the Illini are going to look for 2022 to be a rebound year. Lots of returning talent, lots of good portal pieces, so can the Illini get back to the postseason this upcoming season? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to prediction season. Whether this is the first video of mine you're watching, or what video is this, the 53rd video now, whether you've watched one or all of them, thank you for watching this video. It does help support the channel more than you even know. And hey, why not watch all of them? I'm doing all 134, and whether I've done your favorite team or not, you should hit the subscribe button and ring the bell, especially if I haven't done your favorite team yet, so you know when that video goes up. I want to thank you so much for supporting my channel, because it really does mean a lot to me, and there are more ways you can do it just by watching and subscribing. You can like, you can comment, you can share. Really, just in general, anything you do to interact with the channel helps us support it, and I appreciate that in its entirety. Let's talk about the Illini in 2024, but before we do that, well, I got to tell you how we're going to do it, obviously. We're going to take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the day, we'll go through the Illini football schedule and give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. A couple more things before we do start, because right over here are going to be the stats the team put up either offensively or defensively last season, and for your viewing pleasure, right below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. So I'll waste no more time. Let's start by talking about the most important position on the field. That is the quarterback position, and we're going to start by talking about John Paddock. Now, there's a guy that, here, I'll just mention a name right now, Luke Altmaier, who is returning to this program. We'll talk more about him later. Sometimes just didn't have his best stuff. So that's when John Paddock would come in and was a solid player at quarterback for this team last season. 1,278 yards, 9 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions with 59% completion percentage. He threw, doing quick math here, 127 less pass attempts than Luke Altmaier, and you could argue he was the more effective quarterback for this team. He will now be playing on Sundays. I believe he's with the Atlanta Falcons. You take a look at who comes back for this room, and well, Luke Altmaier, as you just heard me mention a minute ago, is coming back. 1,883 yards with 13 touchdowns, 10 interceptions on 64.8 completion percentage. Now, look, sometimes for this team, he was really, really good. He can be a very, very solid player for this offense, but there were also times where he just wasn't that great, and there's no sugarcoating that. Those touchdown numbers got to come up. The yardage got to come up. He only averaged 7 yards per completion, 10 interceptions last year. You have to see that take a step back. This is a player in Luke Altmaier. This is a very pivotal season for him, because if he doesn't play well, this is an Illinois team that can underachieve. If Altmaier plays well, this can be a team that overachieves and is sneaky competitive in the Big Ten Conference. I truly do believe that, and I still believe in the abilities of Luke Altmaier. I think he's a pretty solid player. Donovan Leary and Cal Swanson will back him up, but it is Luke Altmaier's show yet again in 2024. Talking about the running back room, Reggie Love III, who was the leading rusher last year, the only guy to get 100 carries for this team last season, had 116 of them, 567 yards last season with 4 touchdowns, 4.9 yards per carry. There's the yards per carry number. He has gone over to the Purdue Boilermakers. So when you talk about talent that comes back, Caden Fegan, Josh McCray, and Aiden Lafferty all come back. Fegan was the second leading rusher last year with 438 yards and 2 touchdowns. Luke Altmaier, technically that third leading rusher last season, while Josh McCray, who's had up and down moments throughout his Illini career, will come back and probably fill right into that running back 2 spot from last season. Lafferty was a depth piece last year that should fit into the running back 3 role. You do lose some pretty solid talent out of the wide receiver room, and 2 really good pieces that are now going to be playing on Sundays. They are gone to the NFL. Casey Washington and Isaiah Williams were your top 2 receivers last year. Washington, 670 yards, 4 touchdowns on 49 catches. That was second fiddle to what Isaiah Williams did last season. 82 catches led the team, 1,055 yards led the team, 12.9 yards per catch. Pretty solid number there. Didn't lead the team. Casey Washington technically had more yards per catch, but 5 touchdowns there, second on the team, because the player that led the team, well, he's coming back, but the player that led the team in receiving among tight ends was Tip Ryman, however you say that last name. I apologize for mispronunciations. He has gone to play on Sundays. He is off to the NFL, while Griffin Moore, your second leading receiver among tight ends last year, is off through the transfer portal. So you take a look at what comes back in this wide receiver and tight end room? Well, Pat Bryant is coming back. He was the guy that led the team in touchdowns last season. Had 560 yards, 43 catches, and 7 touchdowns last year. Malik Elzy, Ashton Hollins, and Hank Beatty all come back to give this wide receiver room some depth, but there is a player coming in through the transfer portal whom you have to keep an eye on, and that is Zachary Franklin. Is coming over from Ole Miss, where I believe had some injury problems last season, and it's unfortunate because he's a very good player, as evidenced by his career with the UTSA Roadrunners. Listen to this. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in 2021 and 2022, had 12 touchdowns in 2021, had 15 touchdowns in 2024, or 2023, or 2022, my apologies, what am I even saying? 2023, the year he's hurt. 2021, 12 touchdowns. 2022, 15 touchdowns. I had to clear that up because things got jumbled around in my mind. You do get a couple of guys in Mario Sanders and Michael Bartolotta coming in through the portal as well, I believe as JUCO community college transfers. But Zachary Franklin, Pat Bryant is good, but Zachary Franklin will be that number one target for this team in 2024. Tight end room, Tanner Arkin does come back, but you do get some pieces coming over from the portal. Cole Rusk is coming over, I believe, from Murray State. While you do get Carson Gata in as, again, I believe another community college Duke. Oh, no, wait. He might actually be a D2 FCS level player transfer. Either way, Carson Gata does come into this tight end room. Could see him play some pretty solid minutes. And on the offensive line, you lose Isaiah Adams and Julian Pearl to the not the transfer portal, to the NFL. Very talented offensive lineman. The guy you lose to the portal that's notable is Andrew Dennis. So here is what's coming back for this offensive line in 2024. Desmond Schuster, Zy Chrysler, Josh Kreutz, Josh Getsy, and Hunter Whitenack. Oh, my apologies. There's a second and sign there. I apparently have another name. And Brandon Henderson. They all come back on this offensive line while you get J.C. Davis, Kevin Wigginton, and Melvin Priestley. However you say that last name, I apologize. They all come in through the transfer portal. So let's talk about this Illinois offense as a whole. Again, this offense will depend a lot on what Luke Altmaier or any other quarterback is going to give them in 2024. If Altmaier can elevate his play from last season, Bryant, Franklin, some of these tight ends coming in are going to be utilized to their full ability. If he can't, well, this is an Illinois offense that can definitely underachieve in 2024. Let's talk about the defense here this upcoming season for the Illini. A lot of solid pieces from last year, especially on this defensive line, are going to be gone. You lose 3 guys to the NFL, all of them really, really talented. I'm talking about Jerzon Newton, Keith Randolph, and Denzel Daxon. All 3 of these guys played some pretty big minutes on the defensive line last season. Newton and Randolph more so than Daxon, but Daxon's still a big part. Newton last year, 52 tackles, 7.5 sacks. That led the team. 49 tackles in the sack and a half for Randolph. And for Daxon, a very modest but very good 27 tackles on the defensive line for him last season. All 3 of them were highly impactful players, especially that of Jerzon Newton, that will be leaving this team. So you look at what comes back on the defensive line, and Illini fans, put some more names in the comment section below. I have 4 of them here. I think I'll mention 1 or 2 more, but Tara Edwards and Alex Bray come back, while you do get Dennis Briggs and Enyas Sledge. I probably butchered that first name, so I apologize, but Briggs and Sledge are former or Power 5 transfers coming over to this Illini team. Florida State is bringing Briggs is coming over from Florida State, while Sledge comes over, I believe, from Auburn. There is a Youngstown State transfer, I believe, by the name of Anthony Johnson. I do not have his name down. I'll fact check that 1 second. Why can I not? There it is, Anthony Johnson. I did get it correct, but again, let me know more defensive line names that can make an impact in the comment section below. I only have 4 here. It could prove to be a pretty thin defensive line for Illinois this upcoming season, especially with all they lose to the NFL. Tariq Barnes is gone out of the linebacker room. Pretty solid player last season. Is going to go play on Sundays. 25 tackles and a sack for him last season. However, a lot of this linebacker room does come back to, again, a lot of really good players come back. Dylan Roziak was your leading tackler last year at 82 tackles, 3 passes defended. Getting Seth Coleman back is huge. 50 tackles, was second on the team with 6 sacks last season. 4 passes defended for him. Kenenna Odeluga, Gabe Jockus, Alec Bryant, James Kreutz, I believe they're brothers, to the offensive linemen, Josh and Ryan Mead, while Daniel Brown is a JUCO community college player that comes in and will play some solid minutes out of this linebacker room. Defensive backs, let's talk about it. You lose some pretty good pieces here. Tavion Nicholson is going to be gone, and, pretty solid player last season. 36 tackles and 6 pass defended. That mark was second on the team. You also do lose Clayton Bush. I'm getting ahead of myself. I skipped one line. And you also do lose Elijah McCantos, who was a depth piece for this team last year, but you lose those two guys through the transfer portal in your cornerback room. Now we'll talk about Nicario Harper and Clayton Bush, who both leave your safety room, and both were good players last season, right behind each other on the tackle leaderboard. Harper had 48, Bush had 42. You tack on 2 pass defended and a pick for Harper and a pass defended for Bush. You're losing some pretty solid safeties from last season, and Zachary Toby is going to be gone through the transfer portal. Toby was kind of a safety cornerback type player, but last season did have some pretty solid numbers, 25 tackles with 5 passes defended. So you look at who comes back. The cornerback room was left a little bit thin. Tyler Strain is the main corner coming back here to this team, 35 tackles, 3 passes defended, and a pick for him last season. So what do? You supplement through the transfer portal. Chase Canada is the highest profile corner coming in here and should play the most minutes out of anyone in this cornerback room, at least transferring into the program. But you do get Terrence Brooks, who's coming over from Texas. You get Torrey Cox, who's coming over from Ohio as well. They could end up playing some solid minutes. Miles Scott, Xavier Scott, Matthew Bailey, and Mac Resitich will all be back in this safety room. And kickers are people too, so let's show them some love. You do lose Caleb Griffin due to graduation, but Hugh Robertson and David Olano are back to do the punting and kicking duties respectively for the Illini in 2024. So let's talk about the Illini defense. Even though the numbers here that you see right over here are not super fantastic, there were a lot of good players on this Illini defense last year. Well, a lot of those players are gone, especially on the defensive line and in that deep secondary as well. Granted, a lot of talent is still here. Brett Bielema has built good defenses before. He can do that again in 2024. There are a lot of really good pieces here, especially if those cornerback transfers fit in and if that defensive line can supplement all that they lost. Again, depth might be a concern in that position, and that's just due to everything that they lost from last season. Let's dive on into the Illini football schedule, and it looks like this. Any game at home is going to be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics or that slanted text, with one neutral site game listed accordingly. Any game that's highlighted in green, the date will be highlighted, is a game that I think the Illini will easily win. Any game in yellow is a game they're going to have to claw, scratch, and fight to be able to pull out that win, but they're going to be able to do it. In my opinion, while red is any loss that I'm predicting for the Illini here in 2024. They will start out with a win on a Thursday against the Eastern Illinois Panthers, I do believe is their nickname, although someone can fact check me on that in the comment section below. So that starts out with the win, and then you move on to week 2 against the Kansas Jayhawks. Now, Kansas, I have being a very talented team this season. Jalen Daniels is back, especially if he stays healthy. Boy, that's a Kansas offense that's going to be really dynamic. It can absolutely take it to this Illinois secondary and this Illinois defense, period. If the defensive front does not have a pass rush or a pretty solid rush defensive game plan in place, well, then Kansas rush attack is going to be able to do some damage too, because Devin Neal is a running back coming back, pretty good player, a lot coming back in that wide receiver room. The defense should take another step up as it has the past couple of seasons here with this program, but I do believe that Illinois will be able to pull out this win. Something just tells me that, yes, this is one of those situations where college football chaos reigns. Yes, I do believe Kansas is the more talented team, especially offensively. But when you take a look at what this Illini defense have, when you take a look at what the offense have, Zachary Franklin, and with Zachary Franklin, if Luke Altmaier can play well, basically if this Illini offense has themselves a good day, which again is something that kind of really hard to project outwards, if they have a good day here, they can take it to the Kansas defense, especially with weapons like Bryant and why am I forgetting his name? Especially with weapons like Bryant and Franklin to be able to stretch the Kansas defense out. That's what really hurts them. I think the Illini are going to play a close competitive game, and I think they pull off the upset against the Kansas Jayhawks. I think the offense will help them do so in a game that could end up being a shootout, a game Again, a game that Luke Altmaier did not play well in last season. He's going to look to try to make up for that by playing well in the game at home against the Jayhawks in 2024. So starting out 3-0 here now, as I also do have you beating the Central Michigan Chippewas. Fairly solid team out of the MAC from last season, but not to the level of Illinois in my opinion. Now you enter Big Ten play, and boy, their Big Ten schedule is rough. You have to start out with a road game Friday night in Memorial Stadium against the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and you got to watch out for the Cornhuskers this season. That's going to be a loss for me. The Cornhuskers have Dylan Raiola coming in. Some really, really good defensive pieces come back. You also load up on offensive transfers with some really good pieces coming in over there to give Dylan Raiola some really good weapons. You have one of the best defensive coaching staffs in the entire country. Nebraska should make a jump and get back to a bowl game in 2024. That's a team that I really like, and I like Illinois to lose to them, or I should say I like Nebraska to beat the Illini, to hand the Illini their first loss of 2024. And I think they start a little bit of a losing streak here. They lose 2 in a row, as I don't think they're going to beat the Penn State Nittany Lions. Yes, while downfield ball questions are still roaming the air surrounding Drew Aller and this Penn State passing attack, it's got a lot of talent. They have one of the best running back duos in the entire country with Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. Abdul Carter's moving to his true position as an edge rusher and is going to be one of the best defensive players in the entire country, and that Penn State defense is loaded. On top of that, you're playing it in Happy Valley in Beaver Stadium. That's a loss for the Fighting Illini. Then you get your bye week here after 2 straight losses on the road. You get to come back home and play Illinois. Ooh, Reggie Love gets to play his former team. And look, Purdue got some very, very talented players on it. And I do think that Ryan Walters' squad will be better in 2024. Will that show in the record books? I don't think so. And maybe I'm underestimating Purdue here, but especially with this one being at home, I like the Illini to win this game. I think by this point, they have some things figured out defensively in order to replace the talent that they lost, in order to fill gaps in. And again, Purdue, I think, just needs a little bit more time under Ryan Walters, a former Illini coordinator, to be able to really make that jump. So I got the Illini winning that game against the Purdue Boilermakers. Then things get tough for the Illini again, as I think you lose 3 straight here. I got you losing to the Michigan Wolverines, the national champs from a season ago. Yes, lost J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, all that defensive talent. Donovan Edwards is back. A lot of defensive talent is back. And even though I'm not in love with that quarterback room, Michigan is going to be one of the better teams in the country in 2024. But Oregon is going to be one of the best teams in the country in 2024. Dan Lanning has Dylan Gabriel coming in. Lots of offensive talent returns and comes in through the portal. Defensively, they've loaded up, especially on that defensive line yet again this past cycle. The Oregon Ducks are going to be one of the better teams in the entire nation, and they will compete in the Big Ten right away. And I also have the Illini losing to the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Minnesota's got some pretty interesting offensive pieces. I believe they've kind of found a little bit of a diamond in the rough player here with Max Brosmer, a transfer coming over from New Hampshire. I believe he's going to prove to be a really good player. Minnesota's going to have great defensive fundamentals, a good defensive philosophy already under PJ Fleck. And I think even though that's a game at home and a game that the Illini could walk away winning, I think they see their struggles and they drop that game. Throughout this 9-game stretch here, I've kind of forgot to mention that I still think Luke Altmaier is a guy that's going to be playing fairly well. I think he's going to end up having his bad days, but overall, I still think he plays well. I still think they ride as him through the starter here. After your second bye week of the year, I do think you win that game against Michigan State at home. Michigan State does have Jonathan Smith coming in, and some very talented transfers do enter that program as well. But they lose a ton, and I mean a ton of talent on that defensive line, and there are a lot of question marks there. I don't know if that pass rush is going to be nearly where it needs to be to disrupt Luke Altmaier, because he's not very good when he has a pass rush in his face. Michigan State is a team that I think just needs some time under Jonathan Smith, much like Jonathan Smith needed to build the Oregon State Beavers up. I think he'll need to do the same with Michigan State, as that culture needs a shift. The Illini win that game at home. However, I do think they split their final 2 games of the year by losing on the road to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights because, well, what do you know? Greg Schiano is doing it again in Piscataway. Ethan Kaliak-Manis is coming in there. Interesting to see how a pro pocket passer style quarterback is coming into that system. But a lot of good offensive pieces, really good defensive pieces. Knights are a team I like in 2024. And even though, Northwestern was a good story last season, I don't see that continuing in 2024. technically a neutral site game in Wrigley Field to close out the season. I think David Braun did a really nice job with this program, and Northwestern will be competitive. I don't think they get as many wins as they did last year, and the Illini clinch this game to go back bowling 6-6. I think Luke Altmaier takes a step up in his play from last season. I think the defensive line will see its struggles, but overall will be pretty solid. The Illini defense takes a step up, and the Illini overall start climbing the ranks back towards the top of the Big Ten Conference. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you in the next video where we will talk about the Duke Blue Devils. Goodbye.